Alright, so it's time to make a career connection. And I can think of few organizations better suited to talk about technology than Microsoft. So let's hear from one of their computer engineers who will tell you more about what it takes to be successful in this field.
Hello, my name is Damola D Omotosho. I'm glad to be joining you during STEAM Week with OMSI. Today I'm going to be answering a couple of questions, talking to you a little bit about my career, what I do. As you can probably see from the shirt, I work for Microsoft, but I've had a really interesting career, and my goal today is to really just kind of talk to you about my career and the different kind of things you can do to eventually become a software architect or engineer such as so. Today I'm a software architect at Microsoft. I help companies build their apps on the Microsoft Azure cloud. I build apps myself as an entrepreneur, and I also really encourage and get other engineers to the point where they can build their own apps and do things for themselves within the cloud. So just a little bit about my career path. For me, I remember very much when I was a kid when my dad brought the very first computer home, and how much I really just was kind of in awe of this machine that had a screen and had a mouse, and it had a very early version of the internet. I'm talking about the type of internet where you can't use the phone and be on the internet at the same time. And I think a lot of that also stemmed from just having experience playing with like Legos and really just kind of building things. That was always something I was really interested in. So for me, when I got into high school and I started helping people with their computers, what was really interesting was that I would spend maybe like hours on end working on these computers, but it never felt like work. It always felt like fun or interesting. And what I realized is that, if I could work on these for hours and it didn't feel like work, there might be something to this. And I think that that's really kind of what really drew me to the profession, right? It didn't always feel like work. It felt more like fun than work most of the time. I think the most important thing to know, to be honest, is that a lot of engineering, software engineering in particular, and making apps and building games boils down to one word: persistence. So one of the things that I did kind of mention earlier in my story is when I actually started, I was a political science major at Virginia Tech. But when you graduated from high school, they only made you take up to Algebra 2. And one of the things that's really interesting is when you go to engineering school, you have to take a lot of math. So a lot of the students who went to Virginia Tech already had calculus, pre-calculus, some of the classes that you would have to take just to get into engineering school under their belt. And here I was, fresh out of high school, starting from scratch. So for me, I ended up taking pre-calculus, and then from pre-calculus, I could actually get into the calculus course. And then from there, I could actually apply to the College of Engineering. And what I learned during that time period was that as far as being an engineer is concerned, you don't have to be the brightest kid in the class. You don't have to be a math whiz. You just really have to have a passion for problem solving, which I did. And one of the things I think is really cool about software engineering and apps in particular is that you don't actually need to wait until you're in college, or you don't have to wait until somebody else gives you a book on it. There's so much you can learn and do online today, and just in general, that I would highly encourage anyone that's interested in getting into the field to go online, check out code.org, check out some of the things that Microsoft has for upcoming engineers, for STEM engineers, STEAM engineers, and really kind of talk to your parents and start expressing some interest in the field soon. One of the things that you'll find a lot of, at least for me, is Microsoft tools. I use a combination of Visual Studio, which is really where I write my code. I work with Android and iOS devices, and I also work with a lot of design tools. So one of the design tools that I use a lot of is called Figma. And what it'll actually do is it'll allow you to actually mock up and take a look at what your design is going to look like, or what your app could possibly look like before you actually write the code. We use a lot of tools just for communication, I would say. We use Microsoft Teams, which is similar to kind of like Google Hangouts or chat, but for professionals and for people who are trying to get a lot of work done. One of the other ones that I use a lot or spend a lot of time on is called Asana. It's kind of used for task tracking and keeping track of things, as well as a couple other ones such as Slack and other tools that really kind of make it easy for me to do my job. So one of the things I mentioned is that I'm actually also an entrepreneur. When I'm not working on stuff for Microsoft or my day job, I make apps, and I have a couple apps on the App Store, as well as games. One of the ones I'm really proud of and really happy about right now is an app called Cardcraft. And Cardcraft was an idea that I came up with when I moved to the East Coast, and I realized it was going to be hard to stay in touch with my family and friends. So I actually made an app that would make it easy for you to send a physical greeting card and actually stick it in the mail. So here's an example of one of my cards. You can barely see it, but it says, "Everything I brew it for you." And I actually have a robot that will write on the card and make it look like the message came directly for you. So the idea behind it is that you send this from your phone. I get the order, I create the order, I have the robot write on it, and then I stick it in the mail for you. So that's one of the things I'm really excited about right now, as well as a couple other things I have on the App Store. I have an app that makes it easy for you to figure out what gifts to give people. It's actually called Ribbon, and you can actually check that out as well. So those are some of the really cool things that being in the software engineering field allows me to do, and I'm really glad to have the opportunity to share some of that with you all today. Thank you.
Well, that's all for now. Be sure to check out our next video by clicking the link to the right. OMSI would like to thank our presenting sponsors, Boeing, Verizon, and also our supporting sponsors from CUI Devices and Microsoft for making STEAM Week digital content possible.